All right, hey, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Friday, September 16th, 2022. This is your morning tropical update. We are still tracking Tropical Storm Fiona in the central Atlantic basin this morning as your main player. Most of the video will be on Fiona. This will be kind of a quick one this morning. We're not going to go too far in the weeds. Yesterday's video got a little more into the forecast theory, and if you were interested in that sort of thing, I would recommend checking out the video either on YouTube or Facebook. We have all the updates there. But this morning we're just going to talk about the latest on Fiona and talk about how uncertain this forecast is down the road. And we're not going to go too far in the weeds again because there's simply a lot of time left to chew on this storm and not a lot of clarity on what is going to happen. So we're not going to go too much in the weeds. The rest of the Atlantic Basin is pretty quiet this morning. We have one or two other disturbances we're kind of watching, but they're not really doing a whole lot right now. We're not really concerned about them. And Fiona is the only player that really matters in our basin here this morning. So this is the latest from the National Hurricane Center as of 8 a.m. The maximum steam winds are still 50 miles an hour. They kind of come up and down a little bit. She was at 60 yesterday, down to 50 today. Movement to the west at 15 miles an hour. The storm was actually tracked a little bit south of due west yesterday, but it has kind of come back to that more westerly direction. So those small changes, like if it starts losing latitude, can kind of shift these cones quite a bit down the road. So you have to pay attention to those small time tracking things. A lot of people just spend their time staring at computer models that blow up hurricanes far away in 10 days from now. And it's like, well, you could just see what the storm's doing right now, and that would actually be pretty important too. But that's kind of what we've been doing here this morning, tracking the latest. Again, tropical storm watches and warnings in effect for much of the northern Antilles, Puerto Rico as well. This is the list of the current watches and warnings in effect. I'm not going to try to butcher all these names. You guys can pause the video and read them if you're concerned. This is also on the National Hurricane Center's website and under public advisory if you want this output, but you can also see it on the cone. So the overall cone has not really significantly changed. We are still seeing that pull north out of the Caribbean sometime around early next week once the storm gets in vicinity of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, which is the island that comprises Haiti and the Dominican Republic. So that land interaction, this interaction right here is critical. That is a whole crux of what we're talking about and why the forecast uncertainty is so high. We'll get to that in a second, but we will show you the satellite presentation of Fiona this morning and some things to watch out for today. So Fiona is still battling a strong upper trough. There's a trough over the Caribbean that's kind of imparting this west to west-southwest wind shear over the storm. That's atmospheric winds pushing on the storm in a different direction than the storm is moving. And this has caused a hefty amount of wind shear and strife for Fiona as the storm low-level circulation center is lagging well behind the thunderstorm activity. It's all blown off to one side of it. That's causing the storm to stay somewhat weak. We're still seeing like mid-grade tropical storm force winds out of this. But this morning, there's some signals that Fiona may be beginning to overcome that. There's a blowup of convection around the eastern edge of the circulation this morning, indicating the shear may be relaxing just a little bit. And if that does at all, it looks like Fiona wants to intensify. The storm that looks this impressive, given the hefty amount of wind shear it's under, if that shear relaxes at all, the storm is going to blow up pretty quick. So the shear is expected to mostly stick around for the next couple of days. This is the trough here, so to reorient you real quick, here's Fiona, the northern, Antilles, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Florida, Cuba, kind of get your bearings real quick. So you have this upper trough across the region, and the reds and yellows are some pretty hefty wind shear. And you can see Fiona is still on the edge of the yellows and reds, but there's this little anticyclone to the south of the system, and she might find a pocket right here throughout today where that shear relaxes a little more. And even if it drops from 30 knots to say 15 knots, that could be enough for intensification. Then a stronger Fiona does change the forecast theory potentially down the road. So again, track and intensity are related. They go hand in hand a lot of times with these storms. And small changes like that, like, oh, this little wave right here doesn't look like much. While everyone's staring at the GFS that took a Cat 4 in the Long Island, I'm looking at this going, hey, that could be something to watch today. So I would anticipate Fiona may be able to strengthen a little bit today, and that's some real-time tracking we're going to see. But overall, that shear is expected to keep Fiona at the upper end of tropical storm intensity, or potentially, maybe a low-grade hurricane. If I was in this region, I'd be expecting a low-grade hurricane just to be safe. That's how you should always plan for one category higher than what the forecast calls for. So we're not going to go in the models too much. I look at the latest ensembles, and again, the GFS and Euro is starting to agree that we're going to see this pull northward. But the small things matter before we get to this point. Everyone's looking at this curve down the road, but we got to start down here before we can get much further. And you can see that a lot of the models are taking this directly over Hispaniola in some fashion, but there's a lot of subtle difference. Let me illustrate this to you with history, because we know we like our history on this page and channel here. So this is the NOAA historical hurricane tracks, and it shows you any storm that has passed within 40 miles of the Mona Passage, which is the passage between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. Look at the potential outcomes. This is all the storms that have passed through there. You have storms that stay way down here. You have storms that curve all the way hundreds of miles east of the Bahamas, and then you have a lot of them in between. And this is what we're trying to illustrate. And let me show you in a better detail why this is. Because how you hit Hispaniola, the mountains of the Puerto Rico has some decent mountains. You take a storm directly, even like Maria last year, didn't fully recover after hitting Puerto Rico. One of those like all-time great hurricanes, still didn't fully recover. Okay, um, the storm in 1928, though, for example, moved just north of Hispaniola, and that wound up being one of the most deadly hurricanes in U.S. history in South Florida. Notice the storms up here that take off to just to the north of the island. This is because the strongest winds associated with the storms stayed offshore of Hispaniola, because your storms rotate counterclockwise, okay? If you bring a storm up and it has to hit these mountains, that's when it gets significantly disrupted. If you have your storm coming up and it rotates to the north, it can kind of just roll over the island and it keeps itself somewhat together. So if the storm passes here versus passes here, it's 30, 40, whatever miles, it looks like no big deal, it's all in the wash. That's a huge difference, and that is what we're going to be tracking with Fiona. How does she come up under Puerto Rico and go like this? Does she come up through Puerto Rico and like this? Does she come up under both and come up under the whole island like this? Those three tracks don't mean much in terms of overall distance from each other, but they are night and day in the potential outcomes we can have, because as you see on this map, how you hit Dominican Republic and Haiti and all that makes a huge difference in where your future track might take you. So that's where I'm going to leave it today with Fiona. We have plenty of time to watch it again. Look at the Hurricane Center's forecast. This is a forecast to be moving away from Hispaniola until Wednesday. So we've got a little less than a whole week before this gets to the point where it's like, okay, where's exactly going? We may not know anything for a couple more days with Fiona. So don't worry about it too much yet. There's a lot of time for things to change, and chasing model runs and freaking out is just, there's just absolutely no point in it. There's just no point yet. We're not there yet. Folks in the Northern Antilles and the Caribbean, you're going to get a strong tropical storm. Um, we'll see what happens down the road after that. Everyone on the Eastern Seaboard, Gulf of Mexico, Florida, Carolinas, New England, just keep watching it. It's too early to make any calls on this one yet. A couple other quick ones this morning. Tropical Storm Lester formed yesterday in the Eastern Pacific. This is going to impact southern Mexico. Some heavy rain sometime over the weekend. So if you live in southern Mexico and you happen to be watching this, heads up. And also over in the other side of the world, we have Typhoon Nanmadol. This is a powerful Westpac typhoon. Maximum sustained winds are 130 miles an hour this morning. Classic Westpac dual outflow channels. Nice eye feature right here, clearing out of the eye, clearing the clouds out this morning. Nanmadol is likely intensifying today and will through tonight. Joint Typhoon Warning Center now has us up to 130 knot peak tomorrow, which is near category 5 intensity, and this will move into Japan's southern mainland. Is expected to weaken as it does, but we'll see how much that actually happens. But a large powerful typhoon is coming for Japan's southern islands, and then eventually the mainland of Japan. This is going to basically cut right through Japan over the next couple of days, 3 or 4 days of really nasty weather coming for all of Japan. It's once the Westpac woke up, man, it woke up all right. But that's what I got for you guys this morning on your tropical update. We're going to have plenty more to come, and we will sort through all the stuff with Fiona. Like I said, just don't trust the computer models much right now. They're still struggling with this. You have this really big storm in Alaska that's going to kind of change the global weather circulation a little bit. Models don't handle that well, and they're not going to be very reliable right now, so there's no point to chase them and freak out about them. So real-time tracking, see how that plays out, and then we'll go from there as we need to. So that's what I got for you guys this morning on your tropical update. As always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.